From WCAX, first in news, this is the Channel 3 News.
America's longest war may be creating long-term health problems for veterans. Good evening, everybody. I'm Darren Perrin.
And I'm Celine MacArthur. Tomorrow marks the 17th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. More than 3,000 Vermont military members called to duty over the years to fight the global war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan.
30 were killed in combat, dozens were injured, and hundreds more suffered invisible wounds like post-traumatic stress disorder. And now Channel 3 News has uncovered another battle for the vets who made it home.
He was bigger than life.
The 6'2" man of her dreams. Pat Cram lights up talking about her husband Mike, a longtime police officer in Winooski, a practical joker, avid reader, father of 2, and grandfather of 4.
He loved his family more than life itself.
And loved his country. Mike Cram joined the National Guard right out of high school, rising through the ranks for nearly 30 years to Sergeant Major, the highest rank for an enlisted soldier. And when duty called, Pat says he was ready to serve. An 18-month-long deployment to Iraq in 2004.
He said, if anybody has to die while we're over there, I want it to be me. I was so upset. And he said, I couldn't live with myself, Pat, if I didn't bring them all home. That's the kind of person he was.
And then a year-long deployment to Afghanistan in 2009, where Channel 3 News caught up with the Sergeant Major on a couple of convoys.
God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices.
2 frightening and dangerous tours, but he brought all of the members of his Vermont military police team home.
There was no more 24/7 worry.
Until Mike got sick.
It was devastating news.
Doctors at first couldn't figure out what was wrong. Mike was eventually diagnosed with prostate cancer. It spread, and fast. Chemo and radiation didn't work.
We begged the doctors. We said there has to be something more you can do. He's only 47 years old. We need him in our family.
Mike passed away a year and a half after his diagnosis.
He shouldn't have died, Darren. He shouldn't have died.
Pat worries other soldiers deployed with Mike might get sick too. In fact, many have.
It's just unbelievable to think that we could have that many people in one unit to come up with the same thing.
Staff Sergeant TJ Ecarino got tested right after Mike's diagnosis. They caught his prostate cancer in time. His prostate was removed.
Well, my response was, it can't be happening again.
Of the 19 people in the Vermont Military Police Unit, 3 got prostate cancer. 2 died. Several have early signs of it. Others have unknown illnesses and growths doctors haven't seen before.
It is scary. It's not to know what's coming.
Doctors found strange growths on Sergeant Loretta Stoudnaker's thyroid.
You just don't expect that you have to worry about what would happen over there now.
It's not the frontline battles they're worried about. It's the burn pits. Massive, open-air trash fires burning all day, all night. Soldiers breathing in the smoke that hung over the bases.
Pretty much everything that they were disposing of in the country was being burned in those burn pits.
Trash, medical waste, human waste, metals, tires, everything. There were no landfills, no infrastructure to deal with waste in the middle of makeshift cities in war zones. It's gone on for years. Thousands of U.S. military members exposed, and now some are calling the burn pits the new Agent Orange. Used in the Vietnam War to kill leaves and eliminate the enemy's cover. Hundreds of thousands say it made them sick. And like Agent Orange, the U.S. Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs have been reluctant to admit there might be a link to illnesses from burn pits.
I've had quite a battle with the VA to get some testing's done.
Doctors struggle to identify what's wrong with Staff Sergeant Kevin Dixon. He has a strange growth in his ribs.
The government should just step up and say, everybody prior to this date, we're going to, do whatever we can to make sure you guys are taken care of.
He still is one of the most professional people I've ever met. I miss him a lot.
Staff Sergeant Ryan Jacobs describes Mike Cram as a mentor who took newbies under his wing and protected his fellow troops.
Mike was probably one of the best teachers I've ever had in my entire life.
And his comrades say he's still teaching now, his death pushing them to advocate for their own health.
A lot of these soldiers are becoming sick and they are dying. We can't lose another one. We can't.
And Pat has taken on a bit of Mike's role, fighting on their behalf.
We can't let this simmer for 20 or 30 years with people dying. We are going to do everything we can to make sure another family doesn't go through this.
It's illegal to burn trash here due to health concerns, but in war zones, everything was burned.
There was little choice. The military more worried about the enemy. One, they didn't have infrastructure in place on bases or camps, oftentimes set up in the middle of nowhere, no landfills. And they worried about the enemy getting a hold of sensitive materials if they stored trash outside the wire. So they burned it all. Now, some military members, including the number 2 at the Vermont National Guard, say it made people sick. Military honors for Vermont's Deputy Adjutant General.
Brigadier General Michael Heston's leadership, dedication, and service to both state and nation are extraordinary.
A Vermonter who dedicated 32 years to the Vermont National Guard.
Mike, so proud of you. Congratulations.
Brigadier General Michael Heston retired to a room full of well-wishers.
And I could not have been more fortunate to have had this as a final command.
Heston spent much of his life in service, not only through the military,
Why don't you just come out with me?
but also as a Vermont State Trooper for 26 years. Now the 58-year-old is in the fight of his life.
And I was exposed to it.
Heston deployed 3 times to Afghanistan.
This was my Green Mountain Boy flag that we flew over in Kunduz.
And brought home 2 Bronze Stars. He says he brought something else home, too.
It was an odd form of pancreatic cancer that he had not quite seen before.
A cancer doctors didn't recognize at first. And he says this caused it. Are you convinced that the burn pits led to your cancer?
Yes.
Open-air burn pits in Afghanistan. He worked 300 yards away from one on his last deployment.
Those burn pits were going 24/7. They just never stopped.
And what was in them?
Everything. The best way to explain it is everything. The smoke rising from the burn pits was so heavy, it would just hang over the base.
And service members breathed that in. Now thousands, including some Vermonters, say it made them sick. Cancers or strange undiagnosed illnesses and growths. Some have died.
It's really much like Agent Orange.
Congressman Peter Welch is pushing to get more vets on the burn pit registry created by Veterans Affairs. The department documenting people who worked near the burn pits and people who are sick. More than 154,000 signed up so far. And Welch is co-sponsoring legislation to make burn pit exposure a disability. Do we have any actual proof, though, that these burn pits are resulting in military members getting sick?
It's anecdotal evidence now, but what you're seeing is a higher incidence of very aggressive cancers and unusual cancers among military members, service members who were exposed to the burn pits. Our obligation as a society to those service members is to make certain that we include in the cost of the war the cost of caring for the warrior.
The VA says it reviews burn pit claims on a case-by-case basis. Right now, the department says research doesn't show evidence of long-term health problems, and more studies are needed. A statement to Channel 3 News reads in part, the VA encourages all veterans who feel their military service has affected their health to submit a claim, which will be adjudicated using the latest scientific and medical evidence available.
They started a burn pit registry, so we know we have a problem.
Heston is undergoing aggressive cancer treatment and says these illnesses take a greater toll on family, like his wife June, who waited and worried at home during deployments and has to now too.
I never asked for this. It's 5 years I was away from home. I come back. She still is there. And she's the one that's picking up the pieces from me. So we got to take care of the family. This is not just affecting the soldier. This affects the whole family. I need the Army to be there for us.
I pressed the U.S. Department of Defense about whether burn pits are still used in war zones. An official tells me one is currently in use in Syria. They are used in temporary situations too, and when there's no other option. A spokesperson says open-air burn pits are a short-term solution during contingency operations where no other alternative is feasible. For the longer term, incinerators, engineered landfills, or other accepted solid waste management practices are to be used whenever feasible. The DoD acknowledged that burn pits may pose health risks and, like the VA, says it's working to develop screenings and evaluations for service members who may have been exposed and is still assessing the long-term impacts. For a link to the burn pit registry, visit WCAX.com. You can also see part 1 of our special report there.